I don't know if you've ever had one of those days that feels like a grey smudge from beginning to end. One of them being today, my 39th birthday. Rubbing my sinuses at the front that become two massive sinus headaches. I rose with a groan, not in much mood to celebrate. I am Anna and I have had this lousy disease growing up. I am in a situation with this tricky beast that keeps me tied to countless doctors and the fancy private clinic I have been frequenting for what feels like eons. You know, good thing I made something of myself against all odds. I have my own successful business. But who are we kidding? Money is nice, but it's not a cuddle buddy for cold nights. There I am, at the clinic again, for what feels like the 100th time, just getting myself checked and fixed up, hoping to keep this beast bay. That is also where I ran into Ethan a second time. He is a nurse, 5 years my junior, and straight out of some fancy magazine. Good-looking enough to turn heads of any woman, ailing or not. That smile that somehow knew a little too much greeted me like, "Happy birthday, Anna." Standing there, leaning against the nurse's station looking like he didn't have a worry in the world. Thanks, I muttered out, not really in the mood to carry on a conversation. I was just getting through the day without any more bad news. Maybe Ethan sensed my mood. He ambled up to me with a cocky grin and an expression of soulful warmth. "Hey, don't look so glum. It's your birthday, isn't it? Then we could rejoice," he said as smoothly as silk. Ready to celebrate with more poking and prodding. "Okay, fine." I half joked but was mostly serious. "Thanks, but just let this end." Ethan chuckled, the sound low and warm. "And, come on, Anna. You don't turn 39 every day and wag your tail. At the very least, allow me to find you a passably good cup of coffee from your little cafe. The tab's on me. Either way, birthday blues or just the tiredness of it all finally taking hold in my bones, I nodded too. "All right, Jake," I said, finally beaming a small smile. "Coffee it is." Ethan and I walked into the tiny cafe area at our clinic. He went up to pay while I found a cozy corner spot. Ethan was just so relentlessly chipper, a bright light in the white and blue tunnels of joyless halls. He'd been throwing game at me from the first time I was admitted for an extended stay. All respect, relentless as hell. I held my breath and he came back with 2 cups and passed me one without bothering to look away. "Anna, you are the most courageous person I know. This disease, it is you, but not all of who are. Again, you have built a life, a business, so that's not nothing." His words were brutally honest and simple, but rang through my bones. He may have been blunt, maybe, though I just happened to be open, but it felt good, not just a faceless patient file. I laughed, my head shaking slightly. "You always this optimistic. With you? Always. Low and intimate." His tone sounded as if he just picked another woman from the plethora of women who continue to throw themselves at him with titles like, "You make it easy, Liam Harrington, you really do, easy to believe in better days." Why let myself fall? Maybe he used a birthday enchantment, or maybe it was just Ethan being charming as fuck, sitting there laughing and talking with mediocre hospital cafe coffee between us. I had not felt that free in years. I got discharged from the hospital, started to live my routine life, and I thought that was it with the surprises. Then Ethan called. "Hey Anna, it's Ethan. How about dinner tonight? As friends, if you want." Riding the high of our previous conversation, I paused. "Oh, what the heck? Sure," I caught myself saying with my stomach doing a happiness flutter. When Ethan picked me up that evening, he was completely transformed from the dashing nurse I had come to know under his scrubs, clad in jeans and a crisp shirt with the same disarming smile. The drive to this quaint Italian restaurant that he was taking me somewhere felt so heavy and thick. New things were about to happen between both of us. Ethan didn't beat around the bush over dinner. With his red lips parted on a mouthful of spaghetti, he leaned closer and brought me in real close with those eyes. Anna, I was wondering, what if you tried this? You and me. I nearly choked on my pasta. Ethan, you know my circumstances about my health. It's complicated. I will not be able to have a normal relationship. His hand covered mine over the table. Ethan. F*** that, he said, real firm. I love you as you are, not according to your ability or inability. Besides, you should be happy. Everyone does. They were a salve to the vulnerable part of me that lived beneath the surface, whispering warnings in my ear. How could I not be moved? I bobbed up and down for a moment, then said yes, so I felt elated but scared to death. Ethan was an absolute breeze to date. He turned everything into a game, and even walking through the park with him felt like an adventure. He always managed to make me laugh, and for the first time in a long while, I wasn't focused on my illness. I was simply Anna, not Anna with an autoimmune disease. Finally, those 6 months that passed in a blur of pure happiness. And then Ethan just asked me the question out of nowhere. It was at our home, a normal night in, when he knelt on one knee with an unobtrusive ring. Marry me, Anna. Let's make this official. My eyes filled with tears, and I nodded vehemently. Yes, Ethan, yes. Or how we had to get some legal stuff sorted out afterward. Either way. Ethan, I want a prenup, I said to him one evening, steady voice and heart as fluttery as a hummingbird. Ethan didn't blink an eye, which is all the better for me because you being secure in whatever way possible works out perfectly. Without another word, Ethan signed the document in his bold hand. We had a very simple wedding at the city hall, with only 2 or 3 friends in attendance. Next we caught up in my flashing city center apartment hall, being relaxed, full of love, and in those moments my illness seemed so very far removed. Things started out great in my new life as a bride. I was grinding through another day in the life, and it all felt like a dream to me, but Ethan and I both made things seem normal. Until a few months after their wedding, when Ethan hit Grace with some news. Ethan finally broke the silence during a particularly silent dinner. One day, my friend Anna visited our renovated church apartment for dinner, and halfway through Ethan announced, "Anna, I have been thinking a lot about it, and I'm going to resign from my job." I almost dropped my fork. "Quit your job? Why all of a sudden?" Oh, you love nursing," I replied, pretending not to be a little surprised. Ethan let out a sigh and pushed his plate away. "I'm tired, Anna. Sick of being sick all the time. It is exhausting, you know." He raised his eyes to me, seeking information from my face. I gave his hand a squeeze across the table. "I get it, love. But what will you do?" A slow smile spread across his face. Then I thought, perhaps, if you let me lay up and heal here, then at least maybe the place could be nice. Wouldn't that be something? I paused, considering. It might not be the conventional setup. Ethan's cooking was otherworldly, and he had an eye for creating such a beautiful space out of our home. So he asked me, and I replied for the first time, "I like that, if it what you want then." Ethan decided to live up that promise, and he really was the best little homemaker. Every night I would walk home to a tidy apartment and the sweet scent of something tasty in the air. The meals were conducted as almost formal dinners, with Ethan taking care in making the table look like a fine dining experience. I felt like I was being doted on and loved, adored as though a goddess. One night, as I ate an amazing beef bourguignon that he made, "Darling, you have done it again." Ethan poured my wine with a smile on his face and pride in his eyes. "Nothing but the finer things for my top girl," he teased, winking at me from across the table. But the happiness slowly disappeared within a year of our marriage. I noticed a shift. Soon Ethan was in his office more and more often, doling out excuses every time I asked. He would say, "Just paying some bills or planning something special for me, and you." I did my best to shake that feeling, whatever it was. The apartment was still spotless. The dinners were just as good, but that man who used to sit and chat with me for hours was slowly closing the door on. One night the bad feeling would not go away, and I called him out on it. "Ethan, we need to talk. You have been far these days." Is everything okay? And then suddenly, he looked up from his baseball card scanning computer. Everything's fine, Anna. You are imagining, he soothed in a voice which was kind but soft enough to be dismissive. Just tell me why, and I will let you take a fucking holiday from this cage, but we hardly talk anymore. Really, you don't miss how it used to be. I pushed, the anger mushrooming forth. Ethan arose and approached me as I sat there with his hands on my shoulders. Anna, I love you. Nothing's changed. I just take care of some things to keep our lives running. Trust me, okay? And despite the doubts, I still wanted it to be true. His confidence was infectious, and I longed for some reassurance. Fine, I believe you. I mumbled under my breath, but the sinking feeling in my gut said not to write off what I had felt so fast. I wanted you to be surprised. I was going to stop work early for once, come home with the groceries and get Ethan dinner on the go, and maybe just spark something again. My key turned in the lock, and I hardly could contain myself for everything. It was going to be a quiet night with my husband. But I was now too prepared for what awaited me in the kitchen. There was a middle-aged woman I didn't recognize, moving around, chopping vegetables and stirring pots. My heart sank. Excuse me, who are you? I asked, far sharper than I intended. The woman spun her head over and gave a confused look. Oh, you must be Mrs. Anna. I'm Helen. This is just a brief stop for me. I've been cooking and cleaning here over a year. A year? My voice cracked. And who hired you? Your husband, madam. He said it would lift you up, Helen answered, her attention directed back towards the boiling pot on the stove. The ground was about to give way beneath me. I could feel it coming. Thank you, Helen. That will be all for today. No, I got it, I say slowly and measuredly. When Helen was gone, the quiet of the flat felt like hammer blows to my head. I took a seat and thought it all over. If that were true, where the hell was Ethan tending to business? My private detective the following day. This was right out a TV show, but the situation had become dire. I needed to see what Ethan was up to. I was relieved by the quick turnaround on the report from a detective. Ethan had an addiction to gambling. Rather than the regular nights of poker with friends, he was blowing his savings in high-stakes games at one of downtown's casino. He was in debt, big time. That night when I confronted him, he didn't even bother to lie. He looked at the spilled pictures and notes of documentation on the coffee table, his face drained. Anna, I can explain, Ethan tried to say, but his eyes didn't focus on mine. Explain, Ethan. You waste our money. My voice raised an octave, a combination of anger and frustration. Ethan's shoulders slumped. I know. It's bad. I went to the casino as an outlet, but it soon got out of hand. I'm so sorry, Anna. Ethan, sorry doesn't mend it. I was bluffing confidence, but the defanging got under my skin. And why not? Would it not sting? Your gambling got you into debt. How much are we talking? There was the briefest pause. *70,000, he finally said. A long moment passed, then I nodded. If it were me and you, I'd be like, look, my guy, I'ma take care of your debts this one time, but on two conditions. You go get some help for that gambling problem and sign a little receipt saying yo boy paid off those wins. Treatment, yes, I'll do it. Anything you say, and I'll sign whatever you want. Ethan pushed the words out quickly, relief crossing his face briefly. Later, I quickly organized all. So the debt was paid off and Ethan began therapy. His hand shook as he signed the receipt with a pen. It had been a year since I'd spent my life savings bailing Ethan out of his bookie's threats and dropping him off at rehab. It made him return a different, reformed person, devoted to the new beginning I believed we were looking forward to. That bubble broke the day I walked through my front door and saw Ethan, but also his sister, Linda, and 3 kids, all with luggage on 1 box each in my lounge. What's all this? My voice was cold as I set my keys and bag on the hall table, sweeping up all that muss. Linda, who had the gall to not look like she belonged there at all, grinned as she stood up from a box. Oh, Anna, we are moving in. Ethan said it's okay. Is it his apartment? Nee. I jerked my head around to face Ethan, who had slid in from the corner of the wall with that damned smug grin I knew way too well. Jtissessaying. Ethan. Ethan kicked off of the wall and slowly walked over with a smirk on his face. Exactly what she said. I've had enough, Anna. You have been taking advantage of this for years, turning me into your servant. It is my right, after all. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Your servant? Are you out of your mind? I've been taking care of you, covering your debts. And Linda started in again, her voice high-pitched. And that just proves it. You have got him by the short and curliest, paid to keep him in your pocket. The ginger man nodded frantically, reaching behind a sofa cushion to retrieve a stack of papers. He ended his post, stating, I'm asking for a divorce with compensation. Years of poor treatment and alimony since you kept me at home. Hearing it back, the absurdity of his words was a slap in my face. I glanced around at the house that I created, his nephews and nieces taking on puzzled expressions, worn faces. This was more than a betrayal, it was an attempted coup. Suddenly it just spiked to me that there was no point in giving a response anyways. Linda's avarice has spurred Ethan on to make up his mind. They went for the explosion and I simply turned, entirely composed in my motion while making my way to our bedroom to pack a bag. Ethan said, shouting after me with feigned concern, Anna, where do you think you are going? I didn't even glance back when I zipped up my bag and left. I'm leaving. You will hear from my lawyer. Talk to him about the rest. Later, as I walked out of the bedroom clutching my suitcase to leave for home, all you could hear was Linda, under her breath, taking a parting shot at me. Ha! That was weirdly painless. It was a laugh that would once have made my heart sing. This time, it sent shivers down my spine. Yeah, she knows when to give up. Their victorious laughter echoed in my ears on the ride down, but it was broken, empty and void. It was a cool, refreshing breeze of night air that brushed my face, and I thought quietly within as I hailed the taxi with an impish smile on my lips. Ethan thought he was in the driver's seat, played his best hand perfectly, but of course, I had an ace up my sleeve. I drove the taxi to my elite suburb an hour on all popular car routes from a well-fed city. This house was my sanctuary. What Ethan does not know is that years before my business really took off, I acquired this property with the intent of never renting from him and planning for any possible future healthcare needs. It was located in a little village that had got into its head to have a clinic with expertise in my disease. They had always expected to return here someday, well into another life or after my body quieted down further. It was with Ethan's act of betrayal, however, the day had since come too soon. Over the secure gates, we rolled up to our familiar lush garden and manicured paths. The house looked so grand and warm. It was evidence of the life I had created without having a man to be at my side. Unpacking didn't take long. I had arrived with the bare minimum, as all else was waiting. I flopped into a chair and breathed for the first time in about 6 months. But of course that peace-inspired short-lived. Few days later, it was my phone buzzing, Ethan calling me. It was a mixture of panic and anger. Anna, you set me up. Fuck you and pay me rent. His outrageousness made me hope. Calm down, Ethan. You want to meet up and talk about this? I'll text you the address. The next morning, I sat on the front porch and watched as a car rolled up. Ethan and Linda got out, both of them looking in awe at the size of my property. They all looked almost comically shocked. What is this place? You have to ask yourself. How? Do you live in a house like this? As I neared the familiar motorbike rider, Ethan blurted out just before him. I stood, crossing my arms. Welcome to my home, Ethan. I plan to hang my hat here someday. You never even asked, so I never said anything about it. The ever-instigating Linda pushed Ethan. Then hiding all of this from you, Fiend, you're in that dump. Ethan's puzzlement grew into outrage. You tricked me, Anna. Then your attorney says I owe for an apartment that's been sold. I wasted years of my life at that hole. That was a company flat held in my firm name throughout, Ethan. You forgot to inquire for further plans, nah. And yes, it's been sold. Rent's next month. I shrugged off. Linda smirked, her voice laced with avarice. We want this house, Anna. If we're going to leave the apartment, you give us this house. Desperation plain in Ethan's nod. Well, if not, we will sue. We'll take this to court. I cackled so hard, the laughter got lost bouncing off those tall ceilings. Oh, you will you? Ethan, this house had been a part of before you met me. It is preserved beyond your reach enclosed. Her disappointment was immediate as she saw the truth registering on their faces. They had no legal leg to stand upon. Protesting on, I sent a little sign to the security people who had gathered adjacent subtly. Ethan and Linda were escorted away, their cries quickly being drowned out by the white noise. It was cold in there, itself the opposite of what rooms like that should have meant on nights other than these. I would be one of the many men who Ethan was suing for using him as a slave in our home. At that point I was so angry but kept my cool as I knew Tagir had a whole stack of evidence ready. Ethan was the first witness to take stand, his tone hesitating but stubborn. Every day was the same. I redecorated, I cooked meals and cleaned our apartment. Anna took it all for granted. He sneered, shot a hateful look in my direction. She acted like I was nothing. Next up was Linda, giving her testimony which almost oozed with hyperbole. She had my brother completely bamboozled, but she was mean to him, constantly putting him down. I saw it myself. She's a tyrant. My lawyer explained everything in a slow, steady voice, and when he asked our first witness to step forward, Helen Aka, the actual person who had been maintaining our household chores, while Ethan pretended otherwise, it all began. GURYSEAECTIONEXAMINER. What is your relationship with the defendant? My lawyer asked. Working with Mr. Ethan, who employed me to vacuum the apartment and cook. He funded an account from which he paid me. Helen replied, her voice firm and steady. And how frequently did Mrs. Anna touch upon you in these doings? Never. Helen gave me a sympathetic look as she said, she didn't even know I existed until the day she found me in their apartment. There were gasps in the courtroom, and it rumbled with whispers. Ethan went very white. His sister opened her mouth. My attorney then slipped out the prenup, the document on display for all. The two parties, they agreed in writing to this. Mr. Ethan gets nothing if there is a split of any kind. The agreement read, is this your signature? Mr. Ethan. This is where Ethan started visibly sweating and weakly nodded. Yes, but I didn't. You didn't read it? My lawyer cut in sharply. Yet you signed it, correct? Ethan bit his barely whispering voice. The judge made a note, his face giving nothing away. And as the curtains fell, I had told my lawyer to mention the money Ethan owed that he used against gambling. It was his signed receipt, demonstrating that he had not been financially responsible at all, and it showed what great lengths I went to save us from financial ruin. The judge finally looked down at the case in front of him, and his voice was stern. The evidence and testimony of the review established, however, that Mr. Ethan's allegations are false. Court denies claim for return of the obliged amount and alimony. Moreover, the prenuptial agreement is a legal document. The divorce is granted. Linda's expression of rage acknowledged Ethan had his fight. Stupid, she whispered in his ear as they walked out. You screwed up everything. You didn't even know how to play your own role in our perfect setup. Every word they said, every objection thrown by the defendants was like music to my ears. I celebrated their arguments and those of Lady Justice. As long as it lead me away from that courthouse, a tiny breeze helped lifted this way off on me. It was all planned from the beginning again. Ethan wanted to live off me, and he did not think I would see through tokenize. His impassable greed had been his downfall, and now all he was left with were failures at every turn. Funny how life works out sometimes, as I sat in my sun-filled living room looking over the gardens of some ancient and secure village home that was now a memory palace and pure serenity, comparing it to what had been an absolute hurricane dressed to blow tight into centuries past. I had a good business run aground, and I could see enough of the coast to know that my assistant was keeping her head above water with it, while my health maintained its plateau all too close to an excellent clinic. I was happy, but then Ethan came and uninvitedly intruded in my peacefulness. When I looked at the security camera and saw him standing in front of the gates, he was disheveled more than ever, desperate. I had told the guards never to admit him, but he had finagled his way up as far as the front gate. As I started to open the door, he went down on one knee in a badly tragic move that would have been funny if it wasn't so sad. Anna, por favor tienes levarme de vuelta. Ethan, su voz sono lina de dollar. I'll do anything. I will cook, clean, I do anything you say, just let me stay here. I looked down at him, my horror rising with every passing moment. Get up, Ethan. Stop drawing attention. I snapped, my voice running cold with disbelief. It's all Linda's fault. I got her guilt. She had me fall for everything. The divorce and the allegations. It all was something I never asked for, he said, mumbling. It came out as a poor excuse. Arms crossed, anger boiling right underneath the surface. And you expect me to buy that? After all this, you think that a little blame on Linda's part is going to make everything okay again. His eyes were begging, yet there was still selfishness that lined the void behind them. I could see it clearly. Anna, I'm broke. You forced me to sign a crippling debt for the full amount of $70,000, and I am bankrupt. I can't survive out there. He arched an eyebrow, and I was infuriated by the smooth expression on his face, cool as a cucumber no matter how many times we clashed with tense otherworldly powers snapping between us. You should have considered that before you conspired to rob me of everything I worked for, I fired back. His sufferings were self-imposed. How he was now, that was not my job. It must be stressed, not mine. Finally realizing his old tactics were not working, Ethan's tone turned desperate. Anna, darling, I require this. Please. I shook my head, resolute. You need to leave, Ethan. Now. I turned and beckoned to the store security hovering nearby when he hesitated. They both strode forward, grasped one of his arms each and pulled him up with them. No, Anna, please. Enough, Ethan. You've made your bed. Now lie in it. I interrupted him with a little less patience than before. I told the guards on either side of him to make sure he never stepped foot onto this property again. Driving home, I felt elated yet heartbroken, for the man that I loved had truly died and gone. I had dreams to hunt down and a life unlived, not that of my husband deceased. My place of peace, my sanctuary, which I had created with lots of love from ashes. Finally, my life was traveling round, never experienced, the world and meeting people who were passionate about what I am just as much as kinetic. I studied the greenery that surrounded my home, and I couldn't help but get excited about what life would bring. The world was big and open, all potential experiences laid out before me. I planned to do things on my own terms, head up, heart wide open. Ethan was a final nail in the coffin, one shot too many at trust and resilience. And so, new stories were to be told.